Hello, it's Reverend Chris Taylor here, and I'm going to read you a very well-known story. It's very sad, and it talks about the power of love, and how in this particular story, not all endings are always happy. It's called The Little Mermaid. Far out at sea, below the waves, deeper and deeper and deeper still, stood the Sea King's castle. Can you see it in the picture? It's rather beautiful. There at the bottom of the sea, the water was as clear as glass. The sand was as fine as powder. Tall seaweed grew up around the castle walls, and small bright fish darted among its branches. The Sea King was very proud of his castle. It was the perfect place to bring up his 6 mermaid daughters. Now, I don't know if you can see all the mermaid daughters there, but you can see the castle, and you can see how beautiful and colourful it is at the bottom of the sea. Each daughter was given her own small garden to care for. "I'm going to shape mine like a whale," said the eldest. "Mine will have a seashell border," said the next. "I'm going to grow pretty flowers," said the third. The 4th and 5th mermaids loved exploring. "Let's decorate our gardens with treasure from shipwrecks," they said. Then their little sister appeared, hugging a statue of a smiling boy. "Look what I've found," she cried. "I'm going to put him in my garden." There they all are doing their different things with their gardens. The sisters spent all day in the castle waters, tending their gardens and playing games. In the evening, as the sea turned inky black, their grandmother called them inside for supper. Lying on silky cushions, the family ate steaming seaweed parcels and soft sea fruits. "Tell us a story, Grandmama," begged the littlest mermaid. Grandmama had seen the world above the waves. She told amazing tales of men with 2 legs and no tail. "There are buildings as tall as the ocean is deep," she said, "and machines that glide even faster than sharks." Now, can you see their grandmama telling them a story? The little mermaid hung on her every word. "When you reach 15, announced the Sea King, "you may rise above the waves and see these things for yourselves." While the older sisters flicked their tails in delight, the little mermaid sat drumming her fingers. "That's 6 whole years away," she sighed. On the eldest sister's 15th birthday, the Sea King's castle frothed with excitement. There's the Sea King, and there's the castle frothing with excitement. The mermaids showered their big sister with twinkling pearls, but the best present of all was the Sea King's blessing. "Now you can swim to the surface of the sea," he said. "Come back quickly," called the little mermaid. She wanted to hear about the world above. Her sister finally returned, grinning with excitement. "I watched the sun sink into the sea," she said. "Its orange light flooded the water." Look at that. All the sisters. That's amazing. They're beautiful pictures, aren't they? So she watched the sun set into the sea, and its orange light flooded the water. For hours, the mermaids pestered her with questions. "Were you afraid? Did you see land? Were there any boats?" Her littlest sister was the most curious. "Did the wind stroke your hair?" she asked. "Did the sun kiss your cheeks?" That night, the little mermaid gazed at the sea above, and a black blot glided through the water. It must be a ship, she thought. I wonder who's on it and where they're going. She fell asleep and dreamed of sailing the ocean. One by one, the sisters reached 15 and were allowed to swim above the waves. The little mermaid watched them rise up, hand in hand, longing for the day that she could join them. As time dragged on, the little mermaid spent hours with her statue. I can't wait to see what dry land looks like, she told him. Finally, the year, then the month, and then the day of her 15th birthday arrived. As soon as the celebrations were over, she set off for the surface. There she is with her little statue, and there the sisters are going up to the surface. Goodbye, she called to her sisters, rising up like a bubble of air. With each swish of her tail, the water felt lighter. Her head broke through the waves and she gasped. The sun was setting just as her sister had described, and there, ahead, floated a ship. The little mermaid swam closer. Lanterns hung from the mast and lively music filled the air. Closer still, she saw people dancing on the deck. There we go. She stared in delight as their two legs carried them back and forth. A handsome young man appeared wearing a crown. "Happy birthday, Prince Milo," the people shouted as 100 rockets exploded in the sky. There you go, can you see the rockets and the prince? What an amazing birthday celebration. The little mermaid watched the prince enchanted. It was as if her statue had come to life. Suddenly, the weather turned stormy and everyone ran below deck. Waves rose up like mountains around the creaking ship, and a streak of lightning split the dark clouds. Look at that. How amazing is that? The little mermaid rode the surf with glee, but then she heard cries from the ship. The wind and the waves were battering it apart, tossing terrified people into the foaming sea. The mermaid was horrified. "They'll never survive without tails," she thought. "Oh, the poor prince, I must find him." See, she searched everywhere, diving between beams and planks. At last she saw him, clinging to a broken mast. There we go, what do you think? I think that's looking quite an amazing picture. She pulled the prince to a sheltered cove and let the waves wash him ashore. "Thank you," he murmured. The little mermaid watched from a clump of seaweed. As the dawn light warmed the sky, a pretty girl came and helped the prince to his feet. Smiling, he looked out to sea and walked away. The little mermaid floated joyfully back to the castle. "How was it?" her sisters asked together. "Beautiful," she sighed. All day the sisters played in the castle waters. "Catch!" cried the eldest, throwing a sponge ball. But the little mermaid was too busy dreaming of walking with her prince. That night, and every night for a week, she swam back to the cove and gazed longingly at the empty beach. At dawn she returned to her statue again, under the sea. "Will I ever see my prince?" she asked. The marble boy just smiled. "Why do you swim to the same place each night?" asked her sisters one morning. The little mermaid blushed and told them about her prince. "I've seen that prince," said the eldest sister. "He lives in a grand palace by the sea." "Really?" cried the excited little mermaid. "Show me." That evening, all 6 mermaids rose up through the sea and swam to the palace. It stood proud and shiny at the water's edge. As the mermaids watched, a man strode onto the balcony. "It's my prince," cried the little mermaid. "Do you think he's looking for me?" "Don't be silly," said the eldest sister. "There's the castle. Can you see the prince on a balcony?" Day after day, the little mermaid returned to the palace. Each time she swam a little closer. When the prince went sailing, she swam behind him. She prayed for a storm so she could save him again, but it never came. Back beneath the waves, the sisters were decorating the castle for a summer ball. "Come and help us," they called to the little mermaid. There she is following the boat, and there are the sisters setting up for a summer ball. The little mermaid pretended to join in, but she couldn't stop thinking of her prince. "I have to do something," she thought. "Maybe the sea witch can help me." While her sisters swayed to the fish band's songs, the little mermaid swam away. There she is, swimming away from her sisters. It was a dark and dangerous journey to the sea witch's cave. The little mermaid crossed bubbling hot mud, dodged swirling whirlpools, and darted past slimy seaweed arms. There she is. At last the craggy cave loomed up ahead, and the ugly sea witch stood at the entrance. "So you want legs to impress a prince?" she snapped. The sea witch knew everything. "They will cost you dearly." "But I have nothing to give you," said the little mermaid. "Yes, you do," the witch declared. "Your voice." The little mermaid gulped. "But how will I talk to my prince?" she asked. "That's not my problem." The witch started stirring a potion. This will split your tail in two," she said, "and give you human legs. But there are two things you should know," she added. "One, if you drink this potion, you can never go back to your father's castle. And two, if the prince doesn't return your love, you will dissolve into the ocean waves." The witch stopped stirring and looked up. "Do you still want to drink it?" she asked. The little mermaid didn't pause. "I do," she replied. They were the last words she ever spoke. With a wave of her hand, the witch added the mermaid's voice to her potion. By dawn, the little mermaid was sitting on a sea rock near the palace. In her trembling hand, she held a bottle of the witch's potion. There. It all looks rather horrible, doesn't it? There's the sea witch. And there's the little mermaid sitting on her rock by the castle, holding the bottle of potion. Suddenly a door opened and the prince stepped onto his balcony. He stretched, yawned and gazed out to sea. The sight of the prince made the mermaid bolder. She swallowed the potion, jumped into the water, spluttered, splashed, and nearly drowned. Her tail had split into 2 legs. The prince saw the splashes. "Who's that?" he called. "Somebody help her." A servant waded in and pulled the little mermaid to safety. Soon she was standing in front of her prince. "Who are you?" he asked. She couldn't answer. He asked again. She still couldn't answer. Instead, she smiled. The prince smiled back. "Find this young lady some clothes," he said to his servant. "She's joining me for breakfast." The little mermaid spent the whole day with the prince. She was very happy, but kept wobbling on her new feet. "Take my arm," said the prince. "I'll show you around." That evening, the little mermaid stood on the prince's balcony. Frothy waves danced on the rocks below. 5 tails flipped by, and she recognized her sisters. "Come back!" they cried. The little mermaid smiled, but shook her head. She had made her choice. There she is, standing on the castle, and there are her sisters in the water below. "I don't even know your name," the prince was saying, "but when I saw you in the water this morning, I thought of my own true love." The mermaid's eyes sparkled, and her heart beat faster. "I almost drowned once," he went on. "I was swept to a beach and woken by a lovely princess. Tomorrow I'm going to set sail and marry her." There's the prince and the little mermaid. The prince's words were like a dagger to the mermaid's heart. He was everything to her, but he loved someone else. "Don't worry," he said. "You can come with me." But the little mermaid shook her head, sobbing silently. Next morning she watched her prince sail into the distance. The world she loved was lost to her. "You can never go back," said the witch's voice inside her head. "Come to us," sang the ocean spray. "Forever," whispered the foaming surf. With tears streaming down her cheeks, the brave little mermaid disappeared into the welcoming waves. The end.